This conference will now be recorded.
Yes, welcome back everyone. So in the last segment, we looked into how documentation of the requirements happens in a typical waterfall methodology project as we looked into the functional requirement document. And I had mentioned that for Agile, we'll look into the next segment, right? So now let's take it up here. Okay. So what is the basic template that is used for your documentation of requirements in Agile, to be more specific, Scrum based projects? It's nothing but your user stories, right? And do you remember what the template used for the user story typically? It starts something like this. Okay, I want to, so this is the template of a user story. Of course, you need to follow it by acceptance criteria. That's the next thing. But this one line statement, how do you write it? Now, let us take the example of the link itself. Notify me link that should be displayed, right? If you have to write a user story for that, how would you write it? So this format, we just touched upon it in one of our earlier videos. So I mentioned that here you ideally mention who, here you mention what, and here you mention why. So this hyperlink called notify me is for whom? It's for the user, right? So for the customer, you can say. I'll say as a customer, what does the customer need over here? Wants to be able to use the notify me link, right? So I want to, maybe you can say I want to click on notify link in the product details page when a particular variant of the product is out of stock, so that, right? So what am I doing here? I'm following the same thing which I've written earlier. So I'm saying as a, I want to, here, okay, so that I can be informed when the variant is back in stock. Okay, so this is the user story. Now, as I said, you need to follow it with acceptance criteria. What do you mean by that again? Acceptance criteria is nothing but the list of conditions which have to be fulfilled for this particular requirement to be developed and tested properly. Okay, so now what you mentioned here, again here acceptance criteria can be in the format of, given, when, then format. When you start working into projects, you might identify that there are scenarios where you're not actually following this format, but it's good to know. Okay, so what you say is, given a particular scenario, when a particular action is taken, then this is the way it should behave. You write it in this format. Now take this example. Given customer has logged in to the website, when the customer wants to purchase a particular variant which is out of stock, then display a hyperlink to the customer below the size option which is not available. Okay, this can be one point. You can write one more point here. Given a customer is logged into the website, when customer wants to purchase a particular product, and okay, you can, let me put that way also. So if you have too many points, then how do you write it? For example, I'll say one more thing. Given a customer is logged in and is in the product details wants to purchase a smartphone when the smartphone is of the price range greater than the rupee symbols. I'm using it this way, 1 lakh. Then display the hyperlink. So what I've done here different from the above point, I've added something called as and. When you want to put in too many points in the given section or when or then, you can do that by adding the and point. Display the hyperlink in such product related details page and show the link below the size option and when the smartphone is price range and the product has not reached end of life. You remember it, if it is end of life where it is no more, being manufactured by the company, then you don't get to sell it, right? So you're putting these points clear. You're saying given a customer is logged into a website and wants to purchase a smartphone when the smartphone is of this price range and is not of end of life, then you display the hyperlink and the specific product is out of stock. Then display the hyperlink in such product details page and show the below size option and maybe and keep it clickable and display a window when this link is clicked. So this becomes one point. And as I said, this is not a necessity. This is not a mandatory point that your acceptance criteria should always have this given when then format followed. But your user story should definitely follow this particular format of as a I want to so that. Okay. So this is to give an example of how you write a user story. Now if so now your next logical point will be, okay, if I do not follow this given when then format, then what is the format that I need to follow? Simple. Follow the bullet points. That's it. Um, you know, this hyperlink should be displayed in the product details page, and this link should be clickable and display a pop-up window when the customer clicks on it. You can write like this, bullet points one after the other. The end objective again here is to make it as detailed as possible for the customer who wants, for the developers and testers who want to build this particular functionality into the application. Okay, I hope you have got an idea. Now, what you are supposed to do is think of the other requirements. Now, this is just one thing, right? You can write a user story for the SMS and emails. You can, and again for SMSs, you have one acknowledgement SMS, one for requesting the customer to come back and complete the purchase, one for end of life. You have these SMSs, specific corresponding emails are there, pop notifications are there, and what if the customer has clicked and has not received within next 2 to 3 days, then the apology mail is there, apology SMS is there. So you can talk of all of these requirements and create specific user stories. I'm not saying you have to do it perfectly, but give it a try. Attempt writing a user story. If you're not able to write it due to some reason, search on the YouTube for user story related videos, and that should really help a lot in order to understand what can be going into it. And again, there is no sure shot or one method of writing user stories which will help you everywhere across and this is the best format, nothing like that. You will start preparing better user stories as in how you create more and more user stories, as simple as such. Okay, so this was about the user stories. Let me also touch upon the test cases, because when you work or when you start working as a business analyst, it is always a good thing to know about what is the work done by the other people in the team. Developers, of course, you can't get into the coding part being a BA, so you can omit that. But when the testing people, the QAs, get into a project, you should be in a position where you can understand what sort of testing is done by them. Is the test coverage clear enough, or are they considering the exception scenarios, negative scenarios? You need to get into all those details, so it'll help. Okay, so I'll just give a brief of test cases, and I think maybe we can spend more time by looking at sample test cases later. Okay, but in this document, in this segment, let's take a look at a sample one. So again, here there's not written in stone that this is the exact way, these are the exact columns that should be there in every test case document. This is a sort of a sample test case document which works in a project like this type. If you work in some other project, maybe you'll have some reduced number of columns, or sometimes you may have more number of columns. That and all depends. Okay, so what you're doing here is you're just making sure that the testing happens properly. So you create a test case, and then the QA person will execute it, mention that yes, it is working fine, or mentions no, it is not working fine. And if it is not working fine, developer has to fix it, and then this gets retested, and that has to get fixed. And in this way, you're ensuring that whatever has been developed is really meeting the business objective. That is purpose. Okay. Now here you see a lot of columns. So the first column is nothing but the test case ID, which is nothing but a unique identifier that you want to give for your test case. So it is simple like notify me underscore 001 002, like that. You can just keep on incrementing the number. This is a unique identifier. That's it. FRD reference number, this comes into picture when you have too many FRDs, and you have a very cumulative test case document created with multiple tabs having multiple functionality related test cases. Then it comes into picture. Or else you can actually, let me do something like, let me do something. I'll just keep it like this. Okay, so this is something like an optional section. You don't have to always add it. Now here the third point is about the specific functionality which is going to be tested using this every single test case. Okay, so this is required. Feature and section name within the document, you have to mention that. Test case description, dependency, step description, these are very much important. The test case description tells what exactly do you want to test. So here, we'll get into those details later in the next section. So you give a description of what is a test case. Then if there is any dependency, that if I have to test this scenario, then prior to this should be in place. If there is any such precondition, any dependency, you mention that here. Then you call out these specific steps need to be followed to test this scenario. Okay, for this test case description which has been added here, in order to test this, these are the steps that you need to follow. You mentioned that. Then there's something called as expected result, and there should be a actual result. So expected result is nothing but you're saying if I click on this, a pop-up window should appear. That is your expectation. Actual result will come when the QA is actually testing it. So when the QA has tested and clicked on that link, a pop-up window has come. Then actual result also will say pop-up window should display. So both expected and actual result will be same. Test cases pass. But let's say as a QA person has clicked on the hyperlink, instead of opening a pop-up window, it displayed an error message. Then actual result will say error message related screen has been displayed. So your expected result and actual result will be different. That means this test case has failed and it has to be retested after the developer fixes it. Okay, that is the actual result. Then you have the status, is it pass or fail? As I was telling you, if expected and actual results are same, it's a pass, or else it's a fail. The other things like functional test parameter, functional can still be, it depends on certain parameters that you might need it. Test parameter, if any test data required for that specific field, you mention that as test parameter, and this corresponding value in the test data. For example, maybe test parameter is username and password. Test data will be username is admin and password is admin1. Okay, that's a test data. So you mention that for that where it is required. Test trail path is related to the specific location where the test case will be placed. You don't have to really focus on it. This also you can keep it like this. Designer is nothing but the person who has created this test case. So here there's a guy called Praveen who has created it. So he has written his name. Other scenarios, if there is any relevant other scenarios which are down below being mentioned as part of other test cases, you can just give a reference to that in this other scenarios. Okay, this is overall about what happens in this case. If you have already got an idea, it is good. Or else in the next segment, I will actually go through the examples to give you a better idea. And if you're thinking, okay, for this notify me, there are just two test cases, that is enough. No, that is not how it works. You need to test thoroughly. So for testing thoroughly, you need to have enough number of test cases created. So we will, these are two are just a sample. So I'll just run you through what are the other test cases also that are possible in the next video. Okay. Hope things are clear about the test case here. If it is not, when we look at examples, it will become clear. User stories is more of a priority as a business analyst. So focus on user stories first. Try to create sample user stories, and refer to some online help if required, because it is something which will be your bread and butter later. Because most of the projects will be agile, and agile, it is a user story which is the format of documenting the requirements. Okay, so we'll stop this video here. We'll meet again in the next one. Thanks everyone.